They crossed an ocean and most of a continent, and they did it before the age of air travel. Many made the journey to claim a piece of land of their own, something that had once seemed impossible. Others traveled west looking for adventure. Still others made the move because it was no longer safe to stay where they were. All of them were hoping to find something better, and all of them once had a home called Estonia.
My name is Bob Kingsep. I'm the grandson of Hendrik Kingsep, who was the first Estonian pioneer to register a homestead in Alberta. He initially homesteaded in the Sylvan Lake area, and then about 4 years later moved to the Eckville-Gilby area. My grandfather's very first little homestead, or a little house that he had here, with his two younger children, his wife, and his father, Horma Ott, came to visit to see how his sons were doing. And he came in the wintertime, and it was very cold, and he caught, I believe it was pneumonia or whatever, and in spite of being able to get a doctor, he passed away here. And so his grave is one of the first grave sites that we have here in this local area. The thinking was that we'd like to bring some token of Horma Ott's burial here back to Estonia, back to his hometown. And I would like to see if I can chip a piece of the rock off and take that back to Estonia. I think that would be just a nice symbolic gesture to have a part of him there. There we go. That's what we want. There's our chip that we're going to bring to Horma Ott's farm in Estonia. This is going to be very interesting. Really a lot of fun to do this. And we'll be able to show the relatives something that we have brought home. It's good.
The Kingsep brothers first bought land near Sylvan Lake, then moved a little further west where there was room for others coming from Estonia. How did they find this area that felt so much like their homeland? Was it pure luck? Or was it careful planning?
No, it was not predetermined that they search out the land that was sort of identical to their homesteads in Estonia. They just looked around the countryside and found a place that had a lot of appeal. There was a medicine river that was flowing through the valley and abundant fish resources. So that all added up to good agriculture, good food potential, and they just wanted to settle down there. And of course, above all else, homestead land was available in that valley during that time. And eventually that Medicine Valley Estonian community grew and had about just under 200 Estonians living in close proximity.
This is a great community. The Estonian settlement here is fascinating because the pioneers chose to come here, arriving in this valley in 1903, and that's considered the first period of settlement. Then the second wave of settlement, which was very important, was between the wars, so say from 1920 to 1940 generally. And that group brought a lot of energy. A lot of single men left Estonia seeking their economic betterment by coming here to claim land and marry a lot of pioneer daughters, by the way. And then the third wave was after the war. So that's the part of community that I'm most familiar with. Many people were sponsored by the local Estonian families here to come as refugees and immigrants. And that was the case for our family.
Just up the road from Hendrik Kingsep's gravesite is another cemetery, the Gilby Cemetery. This one is not exclusive to Estonians, but one day each spring, a few Estonian families do their bit to spruce the place up and connect with their ancestors and their neighbors.
I would say that they had a strong spirit of community, and there were a lot of Swedes and Finns here too, and I think the communities interacted with each other. I think it's a combination of, if you were a pioneer here, you had to be pretty darn independent and self-sustaining at the same time. work bees and neighborhood things were very much a part of life too. So I'm sure that everybody worked with everybody.
Totally integrated. And now when I look back on school days and I knew the grandsons and granddaughters of the pioneer generation, many of them never even mentioned the word Estonian. Their grandparents came to Canada, to Alberta, and immediately began to assimilate as far as language went, and their goals in terms of becoming successful landowners and business people and whatever other endeavors they undertook. But the program was to assimilate. The second wave of pioneer, sort of the settlers that came, they also assimilated. Language and music and some specific events would have maybe identified them as Estonian. But by the time we arrived, my parents, of course, were drawn through their war experience and trauma to others who had shared that. They had a shared understanding of that, which may have set them apart somewhat from the rest of the community. But in terms of day-to-day functioning, I felt totally assimilated.
The one little anecdote I'd like to tell you is that in our family, we had a rule. My parents spoke multiple languages. When we were family, we could speak any language we wanted except English. Our folks knew that the moment we left the house to go outside, we'd be fluent in English, but we might forget the German and the Estonian and the Swedish and whatever your languages were. And so that was an interesting thing growing up.
When my brother and sister and I were growing up, we grew up very much in an Estonian environment and culture, and all of my grandparents' friends, and they had a little crew that they always celebrated things together. So at birthday celebrations and Christmas, they'd all stand around and sing in Estonian, and just they'd visit and speak in Estonian. And so us kids grew up in that environment and thought it was quite normal. And it would have the traditional foods, and we just grew up with that. And until we actually ventured out on our own and grew a little older, then we realized, I guess not every kid knows what blood sausage is.
There are more than 20,000 Canadians of Estonian origin. Most were drawn to Canada's major cities, but in the years between 1900 and the end of the First World War, many made their way to Alberta and settled in one of 3 small farming communities: the Medicine Valley area, which some refer to as Eckville or Gilby, the Stettler area, and the southern region around Barons. Most of the early pioneers would never see Estonia again. They rooted themselves in new soil and focused on building a better life for future generations. Little did they know that one of the opportunities these future generations would enjoy was the ability to travel to Estonia in less than a day.
I'm looking forward to it, a little apprehension. I'm not really sure all of what to expect. I don't know the people very well. I don't speak the language. Some of those people speak English, so I feel relatively comfortable that we will do fairly well. I think I'll take these pants too. We will be visiting some of the original farms that my grandfather came from. We'll be trying to compare notes and complete the circle, I guess, in terms of what has happened from the time my grandfather left till this point in time. I'm really getting excited, particularly since I have made the contacts that I have in Estonia. They seem so open, and it's going to be just like going home in a sense. It's ironic in a way that emails and the electronics of the day have brought us this close, and yet we haven't seen each other. I'm starting to feel I know some of these people, and it's a really nice warm feeling.
My ancestors came from a little town called Pärnu over to a area in Russia called Nurmekonde. The Russians essentially decided that they were not that keen on having foreigners in the country. Settlers that were there saw advertisements from the Canadian Pacific Railway that there was land at a very nominal price that was available in Canada.
The people who ended up in Stettler, they originally came to Sylvan Lake as well between 1899 and about 1903, 1904. but they were faced with the same problem, not sufficient homesteading land. So again, they sent out a party and they went eastward, past Red Deer, into prairie country. And again, homestead land was available, and so they all applied for the quarter section, or 160 acres of land, where they started clearing land, where they built their homesteads, and where their new life took shape.
This is Estonian house, and it was built in 1920. And now we have this as a place for all the Estonians to either put their pictures in, or anything that they have that they like people to look at.
This is my grandmother, my grandfather. Here's my grandmother's sister with her husband. Here's some of the Hennels, Kerbeses. There's another Hennel. Here's Klaus's. Here's the Tipmans.
This house dates back to the early days of Estonian settlement and is a testament to the pioneering spirit. In its day, it was the lap of luxury, a giant step up from a dirt floor and a sod roof.
Mostly when they got here, that was in the time when there was a lot more snow and it was pretty cold. And there's no services of any kind. They had to be extremely self-sufficient. The farmers had to raise their own cattle and the grain. And actually my grandfather, I think he went to Lethbridge to bring back some new red Fife wheat that was rust resistant and would be able to stand a shorter growing season, and planted it here. It was just basically like being set in a wilderness area and trying to figure out how to make a go of things without any resources around you.
Well, I think the winters were very hard on them. And when you had, for instance, when my grandfather had to leave the farm to go and work in order to get some money so they could farm and get enough food, the wife was left at home and looking after the children and looking after the animals. And my grandmother, she was going out and trapping rabbits and Hungarian partridges, and that's what they survived on a lot of the times. My grandmother always had sheep, and the reason she had sheep was when they were first starting to homestead. One day, 3 sheep came to their place, and they asked around and tried to find out who these sheep belonged to, and nobody ever came up with an answer as to where these sheep came from. And as a result, they had sheep all their lives. And sheep were very important to have because my grandmother would shear the wool, and she was famous for making her own yarn. So the tradition of having sheep has been in our family a long time.
Come on.
There was no railroad in Stettler in the early days. The newcomers had to walk to Red Deer and carry back staples such as flour, salt, and sugar. It was an 80-mile return trip and could take several days.
And they used to have a church, like in people's houses. That's where they used to have the churches. There was a Reverend Sillop that used to come from Medicine Hat, and he'd come into the area, and I remember Mom and Dad they'd clean out the living room and put in all these benches. And well, us kids, we used to have lots of fun because we'd just run outside while the adults went to church, eh? And he'd come, I don't know, maybe once or twice a year.
Tell him about the one time that you got into his cookies.
Oh, his communion tablets when we were kids. Holy Jesus. He was pretty strict, actually. And on this dresser, he had all this fancy stuff with those tablets. Well, Roy and I, we decided we were going to taste them. Hey, well, we went upstairs and we did. We messed them up. He chased us down those steps, I remember, and he wasn't no minister that day.
The first impressions were significant. The first relatives we met were in southern Estonia, and they would be cousins, descendants of about 4 generations down. You're waiting all of this time to find out who you're meeting and what they're like, and they had family trees going back to the early 1700s and tracing ancestors through down, and they had, in previous years, some 30 years ago, had communication with some of my aunts and uncles, and they had received pictures of some of our side of the family tree, and they knew everybody's name and everybody's position within the family tree, and they were very well versed, more versed about our family than we were about them.
A few hours south of Stettler, we find a different landscape altogether. Not many trees, not much water, a little more wind, and more Estonian history.
My name is Barbara Gullickson. I am the great-granddaughter of Jacob and Mary Erdman, who came to the southern Alberta in 1903 and 1904. When great-grandpa Jacob was 10 and great-grandma Mari was 7, they walked with their families, a group of families of 70 families, from Estonia to Crimea. Now that's 2,400 kilometers. It took them 3 months to walk that. And of course they couldn't take enough food to last them on the way, and the farmers along the way would feed them bread, sour milk, and cider. When they got to Crimea, they found a place to live, and Jacob and Mary eventually got married. They had 9 children.
The climate there was benign, and they enjoyed it. But toward the 1890s, the Russian Empire wanted to recruit the sons of Estonians into the Russian army. And some of the Estonian parents didn't like that notion. And so they started talking about going to North America, where at that time homestead land was advertised fairly widely. So some 20 or 30 families decided to come to North America, and initially they settled in South Dakota. Within a few years they found out that it was too dry and they didn't really like the agriculture potential. So in 1903 and 1904, about 70 of those people decided to come to southern Alberta, and they settled in the area which is known as Barrens.
When I was a kid, everyone came here for Christmas, for midsummer celebrations, for birthdays, and there were a good lot of us kids, and we always played up there on that balcony. The double windows on that side is the pool room, so the men were up there playing pool, and we kids would open up these windows on the north side, and we'd climb out on the balcony. This was the really major place where the family got together, and aunts and uncles and cousins and great grandma and my grandma and grandpa Gus and Magda. We had a wonderful time here. They'd make this terrible Estonian bread that I absolutely hated, but everybody else just loved it.
Pioneer hardships were magnified on the open prairie. The elements were harsh, the wind being a major factor.
And prairie fires were a real problem because there was nothing to stop them. Once they started, they just swept right through. So the smart farm homeowners would keep the grass down around the houses, and they would plow a fire break. And that prevented the houses from burning down. After the sod houses, of course, they built frame houses. And my great-grandpa Jacob and Mary's house was a frame house, and it was insulated with straw. And the neat thing is that this house is still being lived in today.
I did a bit of a semi-humorous, I hope it was humorous, we had some chuckles out of it.
Henrik and Christian were surfing the web.
Illustrating very briefly how Canada came into being.
So they got in the boat, sailed across the water.
How the railway came across the country.
There is this long, long railroad.
How there was a call for settlers to open up the West, and how this call was answered by the Kingsup brothers, and was in part how they ended up in Canada.
And they got off the train. Bought a horse. and started running off into the walked into the prairie till I got to a place called Sylvan Lake. The lady who wrote this is the aunt of both June and me.
Yes.
My aunt Selma was the second of the two children who were born in Estonia. When my great-grandfather came to visit his son, Hendrik, in Alberta, he caught pneumonia and passed away. We have a short excerpt from Aunt Selma written from the viewpoint of a 7-year-old.
The shack was made of logs with a sod roof where the grass grew on top.
Watching him come, go through the illness, and then pass away.
It was at this humble place that Dad's father came to visit us from the old country. I remember so well he had some apples in his big trunk. That is the first time that I had an apple, and we children just loved that delicious fruit. Unfortunately, it wasn't long before Grandpa got sick. We had taken turns in staying up to watch Grandpa. When it was my turn,
I saw him take his medicine, and I remember so well when he said, "Cover me up, dear child." I pulled the blankets over his shoulders. I was about 7 years old at the time. When Mother woke up after a short nap, she found him gone. When Dad got back from Red Deer, Mother stood on the doorway in silence. Dad made a coffin himself, and Grandpa was buried on a hill by the Medicine River. There was not a cemetery, no preacher, and no church anywhere near those days.
The few neighbors we had came together. They sang hymns and some spoke. The ladies covered the grave with wreaths of spruce boughs and paper flowers.
I went to the old cemetery and I chipped off a piece of the rock that is on Horma-Ott's little cemetery.
The rock was passed to Bob's daughter, Toby, who passed it to Avar. Avar then passed it to his mother, Hiljo, who passed it to Milvi, who will be the keeper of this rock. Then a piece of the Estonian rock was chipped off for Bob to take back to Alberta.
Thank you very much. So this is going back to Canada.
This trip changed me from the standpoint that I feel that I truly have another connection that I never had before. It's another outlet in terms of social contact, of heritage. I think when I left here, I was thinking of Estonia, the country, the geographic aspect of the country and how it might be similar or different than what it is here. And when I come home, what I'm thinking about are the people.
It's been just over 100 years since the Kingsepp brothers decided Central Alberta was a place with a future. Since then, several generations of Estonians have laid claim to the same dream. And although many eventually gravitated towards the cities, the heart of Alberta's Estonians lies within their original settlements.
I think the community spirit is Estonian, but I think it's probably reinforced quite a bit because these three communities, all with less than 200 individuals, found themselves really in the middle of wilderness to start with. And so mutual support was just an essential requirement. And they didn't shy away from hard work. I think Estonians are known for hard work, and some people would identify us as being stubborn, but in those survival situations, that's probably quite a strength. And so they carried on, and over time they stuck together, and they furthered their culture and their traditions.
Yeah, I think this is great to see people like this get together and come out to an event where you can have fun with each other and also just reflect on the fact that they're all culturally related.
After World War II, a new wave of immigration saw lively Estonian societies emerge in Edmonton and Calgary. These groups did not attract many of the pioneers' descendants, but it was no surprise these newcomers felt the need to congregate. The pioneers had done the same, assembling for everything from ladies' groups to farmers' cooperatives, from educational seminars to cemetery boards, and of course there were always weddings, christenings, confirmations, and funerals. Many of them presided over by Reverend John Silak, who covered tremendous distances serving Estonian Lutherans. In 1999, over 500 people with Estonian roots met at Linda Hall near Stettler. It was the largest gathering of Estonians in Alberta's history. The event marked 100 years of Estonian settlement and raised awareness that not all had arrived as refugees. Many had homesteaded and helped shape the province from its infancy. The next year, Estonia's president, Lennart Meri, visited Stettler because of his interest in the area's Estonian pioneer history. Other major centennial celebrations followed in the Medicine Valley and Barrens. Together, these events gave renewed energy to Estonian culture and traditions, and created a wave of support for the formation of the Alberta Estonian Heritage Society. Its members are spread out over an area 20 times the size of Estonia, but somehow they're able to keep their culture alive.
Well, I think some of the direction that the executive has taken over the years, or the fact that the Heritage Society was set up in the first place, tends to address the younger English-speaking population, those who are Canadians of Estonian descent, as opposed to Estonians who have come over and need the Estonian society to keep their own focus and help them through life. So with this focus towards a heritage aspect and knowing that we have Estonian heritage, I think it will help the younger generations of Albertans become more interested and more active in the society.
They do their best to preserve customs and traditions, and their thoughts sometimes turn to the old country. But without question, Alberta's Estonians know where home is.
I would say I'm a Canadian first and an Estonian second. It seems like you have that feeling of Canada and the proudness of being a Canadian, but Canada, because it has such a mix of all of the different ethnic groups, everyone is proud of their own ethnic background as well.
I mean, the gratitude for having the freedom to do what you want to do, to get an education and to develop your family. We'd like to think that we're returning something to Alberta as well, in the sense of some cultural and traditional inputs, and of course the Estonians. The world wheat growing champion is an Estonian from Barrens. There are many professional people, psychiatrists, engineers, foresters, teachers, you name it. There are people with Estonian backgrounds in many activities. Hopefully that contribution balances out some of the things that came our way in helping us set up a new life and develop a new home.
It was in 1989, and my brother, his wife, and my mother and I went back to celebrate my mother's 80th birthday. And she had not been back since that evening that they fled to Sweden. So to go back to celebrate her birthday amongst relatives and to see Estonia through her eyes, it was very moving. We felt very hopeful that life would turn around for them. I worried about what it would be like for her to say goodbye to the country. Because she was 80, we knew she wasn't going to come back. And so I braced myself for a bit of a sad leave-taking. And much to my relief, as the beautiful Tallinn skyline receded, my mother said, I'm so glad we came and we saw. She said, there's no place here for me and I belong in Canada.
They left Estonia in search of a better life. Today, the language, spirit, and traditions of these proud people live on in their new homeland. These are Alberta's Estonians.
Kodu läksid sa ja kodu läksid ma, kodu läksid kaks karu jahimeest ka. Ai, 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 la, 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 Kodolaksi kakskaro jahimeska. Peksasait saya, peksasait ma. Peksasait kakskaro jahimeska. Ai ai ai, ja tralala. Peksasait kakskaro jahimeska.